The phone buzzed on the marble countertop. A stark, invasive sound in the quiet of the villa. The preview lit up the dim room. Mom. I picked it up, my thumb hovering. A foolish part of me hoping for a change of heart. Maybe an offer to bring the wine. The message was just 5 lines of text. We'll skip your housewarming. Your sister just moved too. No, sorry, no, we'll make it up to you. Just a flat, factual erasure. I stood there, the salt air blowing in from the open terrace, and watched the reflection of those words shimmer on the glass wall. Then, I typed my 2-word reply. That's okay, and in that moment, it was. Because their absence wasn't a hole anymore. It was the space I needed to build something real. The sound of the text message was a pinprick in the beautiful silence of my new home. I'd been standing at the vast glass wall, watching the Pacific Ocean churn. A slate-gray expanse under a brooding sky. The scent of fresh paint, cedar, and salt air filled the place. My favorite smells. The smells of creation and freedom. I was finalizing the delivery notes for the dinnerware, imagining where everyone would sit. Then, the buzz. I knew it was her. It was always her, right when I was on the cusp of happiness. Her timing impeccably cruel. Mom. I picked up the phone, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. This was the confirmation, the official RSVP to a question I'd been too afraid to ask directly. Do I matter enough? The words were clinical. We'll skip your housewarming. Your sister just moved too. I read it once, then again. Each time, the letters seemed to sharpen, cutting deeper. Skip, like it was an optional level in a video game. Your sister just moved too. As if Bianca's move to a new apartment in the city was morally equivalent to me building a life from the ground up on this wild, remote cliffside. The justification was an insult wrapped in an excuse. My thumb, which had been poised to type a pleading, "But you promised," instead found a different truth. That's okay, I typed, and pressed send before I could second guess it. I set the phone down, screen facing the cold stone. The silence returned, but it was different now. It was no longer peaceful. It was charged. I walked back to the window, my reflection a ghost overlaid on the turbulent sea. And the memories, the old ghosts I'd tried to seal behind these beautiful new walls, began to surface. I was 7, and the world smelled of pine needles and sugar cookies. Christmas morning. The living room was a whirl of torn wrapping paper and laughter. My sister, Bianca, 8 years old and already the star of every room, was perched in the center. A new, frilly pink dress held up against her small frame. Oh, my beautiful girl, Mom had crooned, snapping pictures. Just look at you. Quote, I tugged at my father's sleeve, holding up my gift. A complex, age-inappropriate architecture set. Look, Daddy, I can build a bridge. Quote, he patted my head absently, his eyes still on Bianca. That's great, Sierra. Just make sure you share with your sister later. That was the pattern. Bianca's achievements were celebrated with fanfare. Mine were met with a distracted pat on the head. When Bianca got the lead in the school play, we had a celebratory dinner at her favorite restaurant. When I won the state mathematics competition, my mother's only comment was, "That's nice, dear. Don't forget to help Bianca with her history homework. She's struggling." It was never malice. It was a quiet, constant redirecting of the spotlight. I was the stagehand, silently ensuring the set was perfect for Bianca's performance. By the time I was 12, I'd learned that wanting their attention was like trying to hold water in my hands. It was easier to stop trying. My sanctuary was my grandfather's woodworking shed. Papa Joe. He was a man of few words, but his hands spoke volumes. The shed was a universe of sawdust motes dancing in the sunbeams. The rich, earthy smell of cedar and pine. The satisfying rasp of sandpaper on wood. Your head is too loud. Kiddo, he'd say, handing me a block of scrap wood. Let your hands do the thinking. I built my first bookshelf when I was 14. It was lopsided. The shelves bowed under the weight of a single dictionary. The varnish applied too thick in some places and too thin in others. But it was mine. I had taken raw, rough materials and created something of function and, to my eyes, beauty. Papa Joe ran his calloused fingers over the uneven top. Strong joints, he'd grunted. A little crooked, but it'll stand. The flaws are what give it character. He was the only one who saw the value in what I built. The only one who saw me. When he passed away during my first year of college, he left me two things. His old leather-bound notebook and enough money for the down payment on this very plot of land. Build something that stands. Sierra, he'd written in a note tucked inside the notebook. Something that can weather any storm. Back in the present, in my multi-million-dollar villa, I could almost smell the sawdust of that old shed. I could feel the ghost of his hand on my shoulder. The text from my mother hadn't broken me. It had awakened me. I walked to a drawer and took out Papa Joe's notebook. I opened it to a fresh page. On one side, I wrote, "Those who see me." On the other, "Those who look through me." The second list filled with a heartbreaking ease. Uncle Leo, who was always seated at the kids' table, well into his 40s. My cousin Maya, deemed too eccentric. My college roommate, Lena, whom my parents once called a bad influence because she encouraged me to study abroad. A new plan, solid and structural, began to form in my mind. If my family wouldn't fill the chairs at my table, I knew exactly who would. This wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. It was about proper load-bearing. It was about finally building a structure that wouldn't collapse under the weight of their absence. The morning after the text, I woke up not with a heartache, but with a blueprint in my mind. The villa was bathed in the soft, gold light of dawn, the ocean a serene, shimmering sheet of glass. The silence was no longer heavy. It was ripe with potential. I made a strong pot of coffee, the rich aroma mingling with the salt air, and got to work. Papa Joe's notebook was open on the reclaimed oak dining table, the one I'd designed myself. 12 feet long, to seat 15. I started making calls. My hand was steady, my voice calm. First was Uncle Leo. "Leo? It's Sierra. I'm having a dinner at my new place on Saturday. I'd be honored if you'd come." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Your new place? I heard something about that. Your mom mentioned it. I'd love to." "Sweetheart. Just me?" Quote, "Just you is perfect," I said, a genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in days. Next was my cousin Maya, the eccentric artist who lived in a converted school bus. "Maya, I need your creative eye. I'm hosting a dinner and I want it to feel inclusive. Can you come?" Quote, she gasped. "Oh, my God. Sierra, yes. I'll bring my good crystals to cleanse the energy." Quote, I called Lena, my old roommate, now a brilliant, no-nonsense lawyer. "Hey, you. I'm christening the new villa. There's a seat with your name on it, facing the ocean." "The villa is finished?" she exclaimed. "I've been stalking your construction photos. I'm there. Do you need me to bring anything? Wine? A blunt object for any uninvited drama?" Quote, I laughed. A real, free sound that echoed in the great room. "Just yourself." With every call, a piece of the hollow feeling inside me was filled with something solid and warm. These were my people. The forgotten. The sidelined. The ones who didn't fit the perfect family narrative. We were a league of our own. As I worked, a memory surfaced, crisp and clear. I was 16, sanding the edge of a maple tabletop in Papa Joe's shed. My hands were covered in dust, my hair a mess. Bianca appeared at the door, pristine in her cheerleading uniform. Mom and Dad are taking me out for ice cream to celebrate the win, she said. Her voice a sing-song. You want to come? Quote. It was a hollow invitation. And we both knew it. I'm busy, I said, not looking up from the smooth grain of the wood. She shrugged. Suit yourself. Seems kinda lonely in here. After she left, Papa Joe put down his chisel. Lonely? He mused, looking around the shed. This place is full of potential. Every piece of wood in here has a soul waiting to be found. That's not lonely, Sierra. That's a different kind of company. He was right. The company I was building now was that different kind. It was chosen. By midday, the villa was a hive of quiet activity. The florist arrived with buckets of wild, untamed flowers, thistle, lavender, and sprays of eucalyptus. The caterer, a wonderfully grounded woman named Alara, came to discuss the menu. So, what's the occasion? Alara asked, her kind eyes taking in the soaring ceilings and the epic view. A reunion, I said simply. Of sorts. It was then that my phone rang. It was David, the producer from HGTV. We'd filmed the bulk of the Dream Builds episode months ago. During the final stages of construction. Sierra, hope I'm not catching you at a bad time, he said cheerfully. We've got a last-minute slot and the network wants to add some final B-roll of the furnished interior. Really capture the lived-in vibe. Any chance we could pop by this afternoon? Quote. I looked around the villa. The flowers were being arranged. The table was being set. The space was no longer just a house. It was a home, pulsing with imminent life. Letting them film felt right. It felt like a testament. Actually, David, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. This afternoon is perfect. The crew arrived 2 hours later. A small, efficient team. They moved through the rooms with a respectful quiet, their cameras gliding over the details. The way the light caught the rough texture of the stone fireplace. The reflection of the sky in the polished concrete floors. The long, majestic dining table set for 15. I went about my work, adjusting a vase, fluffing a pillow, feeling the camera's lens occasionally linger on me. One of the sound technicians, a woman with bright green hair, smiled at me. This place, it has a heartbeat, she whispered. I nodded, my throat tight. It did, and for the first time, I knew it wasn't just my own I was hearing. It was the collective pulse of the life I was about to welcome in. The blueprint was complete. Now, it was time to raise the walls. The day of the dinner dawned clear and bright. The sky a brilliant, untroubled blue. The Pacific was a calm, azure canvas, its waves crashing against the cliffs in a rhythmic, soothing cadence. I was up before the sun, a familiar, purposeful energy coursing through me. This was no different from the final inspection before a big build. Every detail mattered. I started in the great room. The long oak table was a blank slate. I laid out the linens myself. A heavy, cream-colored cloth that felt like velvet under my fingers. Then the plates. Simple white porcelain with a raw, uneven edge. I placed each one with a precise measurement of space between them, ensuring no one was crowded. No one was left with a lesser view. Every setting was identical. No head of the table. No foot. A perfect circle disguised as a line. Alara and her team arrived, bringing with them the most incredible aromas. Roasting garlic, fresh baked bread, rosemary, and lemon. The kitchen, with its professional-grade appliances I'd splurged on, came alive with the sizzle of pans and the warm chatter of the staff. I'd chosen a menu that was elegant but comforting. Seared salmon with a dill crust, roasted root vegetables, a bitter greens salad, food that felt like a hug. It smells like a home in here, Alara remarked, handing me a sliver of cheese to taste. A real one. That's the goal, I said, the cheese melting on my tongue. Next were the flowers. Maya had taken charge, and she moved around the table with the grace of a dancer, placing small, low arrangements in vintage glass bottles. She didn't create one central piece. She created a constellation of beauty, so that no matter where you looked, there was something delicate and alive to see. See? She said, catching my eye. The energy flows now. It's not stuck in one place. It's shared. As the afternoon sun began its descent, casting long, golden fingers of light across the room, I lit the candles, dozens of them, in simple glass jars, their unscented flames flickering to life. I turned off the overhead lights. The room was transformed. The glass walls became mirrors, reflecting the warm, intimate glow of the interior and the deepening twilight outside until it was impossible to tell where the room ended and the world began. I stood back and surveyed my work. The table was a masterpiece of equality. The light was soft and forgiving. The air was a blend of sea salt, lavender, and roasting herbs. It was perfect. A nervous flutter started in my chest. What if no one came? What if this was all a beautiful, pathetic fantasy? The doorbell chimed. My heart leapt into my throat. I took a deep, steadying breath, smoothing down the simple silk of my dress. This was it. I opened the heavy oak door. There stood Uncle Leo, holding a bottle of wine and looking uncharacteristically shy. I found the place, he said, his eyes wide as he peered past me into the glowing interior. You found it, I said, pulling him into a warm hug. Come in, Leo. Welcome. Within minutes, the villa was filled with the sound I had craved my whole life. The sound of belonging. Lena arrived, sweeping me into a fierce embrace. Maya was complimenting everyone's aura. Old friends from architecture school mingled with cousins my parents had long since ignored. The hum of conversation was hesitant at first, then grew steady and warm. A symphony of laughter and shared stories. I moved among them, not as a host on a pedestal, but as a part of the whole. I poured wine, passed appetizers, and listened. I saw Uncle Leo, usually so quiet, animatedly explaining his vintage car restoration to a captivated listener. I saw Maya, her arm linked through Lena's, the lawyer and the artist finding common ground. I took my seat halfway down the table, as I'd planned. No speeches were made, no toasts were given. We simply ate, and talked, and laughed, the sound blending with the crash of the waves below. The candles flickered, their light dancing on 15 happy, engaged faces. For the first time in my life, at a table I had built, in a house I had designed, I felt completely, utterly seen. The 15 chairs were full, and for the first time, so was I. The week after the dinner, a quiet, contented hum seemed to have settled into the very bones of the villa. The energy of that night, of laughter and genuine connection, had seeped into the cedar beams and the stone floors. I felt a peace I hadn't known was possible. The dinner had been the closure I needed. I had proven to myself that I could create the family I'd always wanted. I had almost forgotten about the HGTV footage. It was Lena who texted me. Sierra, turn on channel 56. Now. Quote, curious. I picked up the remote and clicked on the large screen in the living room. And there it was. My cliff. My villa. The camera drone soared over the jagged rocks, the music swelling as it revealed the glass and cedar structure clinging to the landscape. The narrator's voice, smooth and authoritative, filled the room. When architect Sierra Vance set out to build her dream home, she didn't just want a structure with an ocean view. She wanted to build a philosophy. The scene cut to the B-roll they'd shot on the day of the dinner preparations. There I was, in a simple sweater and jeans, placing a candle on the long table. My own voice, recorded months earlier during the initial interview, played over the images. A house is a system of supports, my on-screen self said. My voice calm and sure. And the most important support isn't a beam or a column. It's the people you fill it with. For me, fairness isn't a decorative concept. It's structural. If the foundation is uneven, the whole thing will eventually collapse. I watched, mesmerized. The camera glided over the table set for 15. The identical plates. The constellations of candles and wildflowers. It was a visual manifesto of everything I believed in, everything I had been denied, and everything I had now built. The episode showcased the house beautifully, but the through line was unmistakable. This was a home built on the principle of radical inclusion. My phone, which had been silent and peaceful for days, suddenly vibrated, then again, and again. It skittered across the coffee table like a live thing. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The dam had broken. I left it there, the screen lighting up again and again with a relentless rhythm. Mom, Dad, Bianca, Mom, Mom. Lena called my landline. Are you seeing this? She said, her voice a mix of fury and triumph. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. They're blowing up my phone, too, asking how I could be a part of this public humiliation. Let them talk, I said, my eyes still on the TV screen where the credits were now rolling. My villa looked serene and majestic, a monument to quiet justice. The text started pouring in. Mom, we saw the show. How could you? You made us look like monsters. Dad, airing private family business on national television. I'm disappointed. Sierra, Bianca, you always had to make everything a competition. Was this your plan all along? To embarrass me? I read them all, my heart a steady, calm drum in my chest. Their anger was not about what they had done, but about being seen doing it. The truth, once set loose in the open, was a beast they couldn't control. The following morning, there were over 40 missed calls. The texts had escalated from anger to guilt-tripping. Mom, everyone is asking us about it. The neighbors, your father's colleagues. The embarrassment is unbearable. Mom, we are your family. You should have talked to us. Mom, call me back. We need to fix this. I sipped my coffee on the terrace. The ocean spread out before me, vast and indifferent to their drama. I wouldn't be rushed. I wouldn't be bullied. The final text came through as I was watching a pod of dolphins crest the waves. Mom, your grandmother is very upset by all this. That one almost got me. Nana Ruth, my father's mother, was the only one, besides Papa Joe, who had ever seen the dynamic for what it was. She was in her 80s, sharp as a tack, and feared no one. I picked up the phone and called her. Sierra, my dear, she answered, her voice raspy but clear. I saw your palace on the television. It's magnificent. Nana, I said, relief flooding me. Mom said you were upset. She let out a dry chuckle. Upset? I've been waiting 30 years for someone to call them on their nonsense. Your mother just can't stand that the world finally sees her favorite child isn't her only child. Don't you dare feel bad for a single second. Tears pricked my eyes. Thank you, Nana. They'll call, she warned. They'll try to twist it, to make it your fault. Don't you argue with them. Sierra, you just stand there in your truth. It's a hell of a lot stronger than their excuses. She was right. An hour later, my phone rang. Mom, I took a deep breath, channeling the strength of my grandmother and the memory of my grandfather. I answered and put it on speaker, placing the phone on the counter, letting her voice fill the kitchen she had refused to visit. Sierra, her tone was saccharine, strained. Finally, we need to talk about this. Misunderstanding. What misunderstanding, Mom? My voice was calm, flat. This TV show, they edited it to make it look like we abandoned you. You know that's not true. We've always been so proud of you. We just Bianca's move was so stressful. And we thought you, of all people, would understand. I said nothing. I just let the silence hang there. A vast, empty space for her words to echo and die in. She faltered. You've always been so independent. We didn't think you'd want a fuss. You're blowing this all out of proportion. It was then that a new voice, steady and ancient, cut through the line. I had called Nana Ruth back and put her on speaker. 2. Judy. That's enough, Nana Ruth said. My mother gasped. Mother? Is that you? This is a private conversation. Quote, it stopped being private when you sent that text, Nana Ruth replied. Her voice like grinding stones. I've listened to you do this to Sierra since she was in a high chair. You give Bianca a parade and hand Sierra a participation ribbon. Then act shocked when she notices the difference. You built your whole world around one daughter. And now you're furious that the other one had the audacity to build a better one for herself. The line was so silent I thought we'd been disconnected. That's a vile thing to say, my mother whispered, her voice cracking. The truth often is, Nana Ruth said. The whole town has seen your daughter's beautiful home and heard her beautiful philosophy. And they've seen your absence. You can't talk your way out of that. There was a muffled sound. Then my father's voice, gruff and distant. This is ridiculous. We're not doing this over the phone. And the line went dead. I looked at the phone. Then at the sea. The weight that had been on my shoulders for a lifetime felt lighter. I hadn't won an argument. I had simply stopped carrying their version of the truth. The foundation, it turned out, was solid enough to stand on its own. The silence after the call was profound. But it wasn't empty. It was a clean, new silence. Nana Ruth let out a soft sigh on her end of the line. You didn't need to win that argument, Sierra, she said, her voice gentle now. You just needed to stop having it. You built your table. You don't need to beg anyone to come sit at it. After we hung up, I walked through the villa. I ran my hand along the back of one of the dining chairs, feeling the smooth, solid wood. This was my structure. It had weathered its first real storm. And it hadn't so much as shuddered. A few days later, I felt a pull, a need for one final act. Not for them, but for me. To see if the dynamic could exist outside the old, rotten framework. I sent 3 separate, simple texts. To Mom, Dad, and Bianca. If you'd like to see the house, come for a quiet dinner. Just us. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. The responses were swift and equally simple. Dad, we'll be there. Bianca, okay. Mom, thank you. Sierra, I didn't prepare the grand dining room. Instead, I set a small, intimate table for 4 near the fireplace, in the cozy nook off the kitchen. And I didn't use my fine porcelain. I used the old, lopsided bookshelf from Papa Joe's shed, which I had repurposed as a rustic side table. Its warped shelves now holding a collection of sea glass and my most treasured books. Its presence was my anchor. When they arrived, they looked smaller. The vastness of the villa, the roar of the ocean, it seemed to diminish them. My mother's eyes darted around, taking in the exposed beams, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the art. There was no criticism in her gaze, only a kind of stunned awe. Sierra, my father said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. It's something else. My mother walked over to the fireplace, her fingers lightly tracing the mantle I had carved myself. It's so different from what I imagined, she whispered. It's home, I said simply. Dinner was a quiet, awkward affair. Alara had left a simple stew and a fresh loaf of bread. The fire crackled, filling the silences. We talked about the house, the view, the engineering challenges of building on a cliff. Safe, neutral territory. It was Bianca who finally broke the unspoken tension. She hadn't said a word all evening, just picked at her food. She looked up, her eyes finding mine across the small table. They weren't accusatory, just tired. I didn't know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know it felt like that for you. It wasn't an apology. It was an acknowledgement, a crack in the perfect facade she'd always held up. I didn't know how to tell you, I replied. My mother let out a long, slow breath, the sound of a held-in secret finally released. You did good, Sierra, she said, her eyes glistening in the firelight. Really good. There were no grand apologies. No dramatic reconciliations. No one said, we were wrong. But they saw. They finally saw the structure I had built. Not just with wood and glass, but with resilience and self-respect. They saw that I hadn't needed their approval to make it stand. And in that seeing, there was a shift. It wasn't redemption. It was recognition. And for now, that was enough. After they left, I stayed by the fire until the embers faded to gray ash. I stepped out onto the terrace. The cold night air a balm on my skin. The ocean was a dark, breathing presence below, its rhythm eternal and sure. I laid my hand on the old, lopsided bookshelf, feeling the familiar grooves and scars under my palm. For years, I had waited for a seat at their table. Now, I had built my own. I had built the whole house around it. This story was for anyone who has ever felt invisible in their own family. For anyone who has been told they're too much or not enough. My silence wasn't weakness. It was the quiet concentration of an architect drafting her plans. Sometimes, walking away from a fight isn't losing. It's choosing a better site to build on. It's rebuilding on your own terms. If that moment when I chose to fill my own chairs, instead of waiting for theirs, resonated with you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to draw a line so deep it changed the landscape of your life? I read every story you share. This community is built on your truth. And if you want more stories where justice isn't loud, but built stone by silent stone, subscribe. There's always another quiet revenge waiting to be designed. Quote,